Hello. Um, I'm back to have a conversation with all of you. My name is NFamara K Dampha. Um, I am currently a PhD student here at the University of Minnesota. I am studying climate change economics and policy. So I am very much interested in public policy issues, especially around environmental management and climate change adaptation, and specifically my study area is the Gambia. I hold a first class degree in development studies from undergraduate level to my master's level, studied development studies and psychology in the Gambia, University of the Gambia, graduated in 2012. I also did international development studies or development practice, they call it here at the Humphrey School of Public Affairs. I did a minor in science, technology, and environmental policy. I did a certificate in nonprofit management. Um, so basically, what I'm here to talk about today is I wanted to talk about basically share the conversation I had with Jimmy Hendry Nzally. I was invited to talk about how young people can participate in consolidating or strengthening the democracy, the newly pronounced democracy in the Gambia. And I first of all want to take the opportunity to thank Jimmy Hendry Nzally. Jimmy is an incredible young guy. He inspired a lot of us. And I just want him to continue doing this program. And you, the listener, might be invited one day on the show to talk about other issues that might be of importance to Gambians. So this was a live Facebook program. It was, I think the quality of the audibility was poor because the connection from where I think I was sitting was really not very good. So we had a lot of interruptions. And I think when I listened to it, a lot of people might not hear exactly what I was talking about. So I decided to, since I have the technology here, to basically do a better video of what I was talking about so that I am understood and so that some of the things that I did not have the chance to talk about, I can share those things if you have time to listen to what those things are. So Jimmy has asked very important or salient questions, if you like. He was very much interested to know how we as young people can energize one another to participate in the democratic dispensation of our country. He also wanted to know how young people can basically hold our elected representatives accountable and how they themselves, young people, can be involved in the development process of the country and how do we, like I said, share and energize one another. So these are some of the topics, questions that were asked by this famous journalist and very good friend of mine, Jimmy. So I will first of all, from the notes that we talked about sort of basically have a working definition of what exactly are we talking about when we're talking about democracy. And I also personally share things that I am concerned, things that I think as young people we need to pay really good attention to. And I talked about what I expect from myself as a young person and what I expect from all of the young people listening to me today. And I also talk about how, in which sector of the economy can young people be really involved, where you don't need an appointment letter to serve, to come and serve. I also talk about some of the things that I recollected from my own professional and career development. Some of the hardships and the struggles and the success days or moments that I had getting to where I am. And I talked about, if you like, perhaps the principles of success based on what I think are some of the elements that might be interesting or appealing to anyone, because we all want to be successful. We all have that in common. We all want to be successful, right, in one way or the other. So let's get started here. I will first of all start by talking about trying to provide a working definition of what democracy really means. Well, the audience here are not this is not an academic lectures. This is meant for Facebook users, and I'm going to use very simple language in as much as I can to break this down for the average Facebook user to understand, who perhaps may not go all the way to university or to other levels of education. So one appealing definition of democracy is that it's the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So what stands out in that definition is the word the people. So, and when we're talking about the people, we know the government is manned, or it is managed, if you like, by the people, is governed by the people. But that's not the people we're talking about here. We are basically emphasizing the governed. So it's a government that is based on the consent of the governed. In other words, the people who you are governing. So it is the consent of the people that you are governing. Let's understand that. So those that are out there elected, they are as equally important people, but power in a democracy, power, the highest form of political power resides with the people. And the people are sovereign in a democracy. These are people who elect our elected representatives to serve us in various capacities. So what happens in a democracy also, we know power flows from one leader, from the people to the leaders. And the leaders should understand that the power given to them is not permanent. They are there for a temporal purpose. That's why we're trying to introduce terms where you can only serve for a specific period of time, and then somebody else will come and serve. So those are issues that we all need to understand. The power flows from the people to the leaders of the government. Well, the people that we represent usually serving at the National Assembly, we are giving them the power to make the laws and the policies of the country. And the manner or the procedure in which this is done is that majority vote stands. But however, the rights of the minority should also be protected in a democracy. There should be ways and manners in which the minority should also have a say, and there are policies that can be introduced to support the voice or the concerns of the minority. Now, it's also important that we know that in a democracy, people are free to criticize their elected leaders. Constructive criticism is important here. It's not a criticism where you need to insult somebody. You don't need that. You can scrutinize, you can criticize constructively how these individuals perform or conduct the business or execute the functions of the state. And our elected leaders or representatives, whether it is at the national level or at the local level, should also listen to who? Again, back to the people. They should listen to the people, know the concerns and the needs and the suggestions of the people, and then apply those things. And I will come exactly what I mean, how and the manner in which the people, our elected leaders, should create the platform for dialogue between them and the people. So I think that provides basically, again, this is not politics 101. I'm not doing lectures here, so I'm not going to go in detail. Somebody might be sitting down there, oh, he left that thing out. No, this is a refresher for you to have an idea of what I'm trying to say here, what I'm trying to talk about. But let's get to things that I am concerned, things that I am worried about, things that I think we should pay attention to as young people. I fear ignorance and half education in the Gambia. The reason I talk about these two issues, the reason I fear them is because when people are ignorant, when people don't know, usually they tend to be very silent, right? They will be quiet and sitting down and business as usual goes, and they don't perhaps understand how to even criticize or how to knock on institutions that are responsible to play certain functions in the country. And so, they tend to, that's a category of people who are just silent, and because they don't know how to question, right? but they need just a working definition or working explanation. They don't have, we don't all have to, we were not all lucky to go to school, but these individuals, I'll come you in my recommendation, you will see how we can empower these individuals. But I fear half education, and half education here is basically to say that, no matter what your level of education is, just recognize that there are other things hold constant. There are other things that you may not know. You don't claim to be jack of all trade in the country, trying to, if you want to do so, please be ready to conduct as much research as you can. Because when people think that you are giving them information, they rely on you. And what you say, they tend to believe in the things that you say. So we need to be careful. And we need to make sure that we're giving the right information, accurate information. We need to, just as hard is not enough. You need to be able to investigate and verify your information before you share it with the public. I remember the famous words of Mr. Drame in our tourism and development class. I'm sure Philly, Sedikan, and Shola and others will remember this. Mr. Drame said, "The day you think you know, that's the day you know nothing." He said, if you think he said, education, to be educated and to be schooled are different. And I think this is very appealing. Sometimes we think that we went to school and we have certain levels, certain level of education, certain degrees. That doesn't mean that you know it all. That doesn't mean that if you are in the field, you are just claiming to write things that you think you know. No, you need to listen to those that are not schooled, perhaps. Sometimes they are even schooled, but they are educated. So somebody in the villages might not be lucky to go to school, but they are educated. So they understand some of the issues, or even the least they may know is their own experience, right? Their own lifestyle, their own environment. So let us be willing to listen as young people to these individuals when we are there in the field trying to promote democracy or trying to contribute to economic and social development in various ways and manners or means in which we do so. I fear social media also being abused by young people. Like I always say, I think that we as Gambians, we have an identity. We as Gambians, we have a religion, we have a culture, we have, whether you are a Christian or a Muslim, we have faith, There are things that we need to be able to present in a manner, in a way in which we are marketing our country. We're not in essence tarnishing the image of the country. So if you may not know, but before, psychologists used to go, sociologists and anthropologists will go to communities and live with people to understand the culture and the ways of lives of these individuals. But today, technology is making this community accessibility easy. We're seeing different groups on Facebook behaving differently. So, and whatever you share on Facebook, let it be something that, you should be proud of. Sometimes everything you say may not be pleasant because sometimes, we have negative issues coming out. But generally, let's try to be Gambians that can really market Gambia in a good manner. So the image of the Gambia is important. Wherever you are still a Gambian. So if your country is portrayed in a manner in which it doesn't represent, you might not be happy about those issues. Every country in this world, including, even the developed countries, have challenges. They have issues that they are dealing with. But when they are presenting these issues to the international community, there are ways, manners in which they package their information. So Gambians also need to understand that. Let us protect the image of our country. Let us protect our communities. Let us protect our Gambian identity. And anything, whatever it is you share on social media, just understand that it is there to stay forever. Delete it. If people still want to access it, they will be able to access it. So just as a reminder to myself and to all of you that let's share pictures that you'll be proud of if your daughters or your grandkids see pictures of that nature. So I also fear tribalism, not to a greater extent, but I know, because the reason I say not to a greater extent, I think that tribalism has no place in our politics. It never had a place in our politics. Gambians, the level of intermarriage among Gambians is very high. We are one people. Gambians, as I said, are one of the most united and peaceful and most hospitable people that I can find. Go to any country, you will find a Gambian association. We have one in here in Minnesota. Gambians are very organized. So because of our small size, is our strength, so we marry each other. So there is no need for tribalism in the country. I also fear climate change. Doing my PhD program in climate change economics and policy, I think one of the biggest threats to our democracy is climate change. We live in a society today where our development gains, think about all the development progress that you have in the country, can be claimed by extreme climatic or hydrological events. So to mainstream climate change in our development programs, in our infrastructural development, these will be very, very important, especially for the future. So these patterns and tendencies, extreme events, we will continue to see these things. So we need to be wary and be aware of these things. I'm not going to get too much into this because I would spend the whole day talking about climate change. I fear poverty, injustice, and massive inequality. Of course, I know that poverty and inequality, any society, there is poverty in every society, right? There is injustice in every society. And some societies, you may not, there is still relative poverty, not absolute poverty based on the international definition of poverty. But, at society level, there are individuals that will be well off, there are have and have-nots, but inequality also exists in most societies. There is nothing like perfect equality in any society. But I think that as Gambians, we need to know that this is a serious problem in the country right now. The level of inequality, injustice, and poverty in the country is such that we need to come up with programs and policies through which we can minimize, at least eliminate absolute poverty in the country in the soonest possible time. I fear unemployment and lack of opportunity for all of us, young people. And I think when these opportunities are not available, young people tend to be tend to be hopeless and thinking that there are no opportunities for us in the country, and we always wanted to leave and go and seek for greener pasture. So these are things that I think need to be fixed. I will come to the recommendations and what I think we can do to as young people to basically take our level to another stage. I also fear that the current Gambia government, that I fear that they might be signing development contracts, business contracts, without really scrutinizing the terms and conditionalities of those agreements. I want to be clear because this is a very big statement what I'm making here, but I want to say that I am not saying that our leaders are signing these contracts, because I've not seen any of these contracts that they are signing. I've not seen perhaps any loan that they have taken. But because of the climatic and because of the environment, the climatic condition in which we live, the political climate, I will put it, in which we live, there is so much expectation that that Gambians have on the government at the moment. And, and we have the right to have those expectations. We expect that this government will make things better. But the reason I'm worried about this is because I think we need to understand the Gambia in itself is resource constrained. And when we present ourselves to the international community that we are poor, that the former government left with all the money and we have nothing, we have no resources, what is the tendency? We are presenting a vulnerable state of the economy, that the economy is very vulnerable. And to bring, to promote our economic development, then other countries and development partners know that, well, it's whatever they are given, they'll be like, well, it is better than what you have right now. So, and we need to learn from some of these foreign aid or development aid, you may call them. It has not always worked for the prosperity of Africa. We learn from the great mistakes that our leaders made when the structural adjustment programs were introduced. It was not beneficial. It was not beneficial for most of sub-Saharan African countries. And aid development aid usually is not given, whether it's, especially if it's a loan, it's not given for free. There are conditions, there are conditionalities that, countries need to fulfill. Some of these things may be easy, but, one interesting piece, if you are interested in how development aid has been utilized in Africa, I would recommend Dambiso Moyo's book, which is The Dead Aid. She talks about why aid has not worked. Foreign aid or international aid has not worked in Africa. Because it's not just the money, it's also the institution, the governance structure that we have. And in line of that, I fear corruption, bribery, nepotism in our society. The reason that I fear that opportunities will be granted to those who can offer bribe and those who are well connected to people in power. I fear poor health and educational outcomes. I also fear poor environmental status of our economy, of our country. So we need to promote and protect our environment. We need to promote quality health and education outcomes for every Gambian. But more importantly, I also fear the voice of the voiceless will not be heard and it will not be protected. I fear unjust, unequal treatment among all people. But more importantly, among the differently or physically or mentally challenged individuals in our country. I fear that these disadvantaged groups, disadvantaged because of the nature of their being, but I fear that these disadvantaged individuals will not be given preferential treatment. And I think specific attention or specific accommodation, preferential treatment should be accorded to these individuals. Where need be, we can apply positive discrimination, favor these individuals because of the nature or the status of their condition. So I am sounding very pessimistic already. The reason I'm mentioning these things, we all know the challenges that we face. I'm saying these things so that we can reflect as people that these are issues, real issues that the Gambia is going through. And these are issues that young people, we need to be aware of. And these are issues that we need to fight against. But however, I'm a very optimistic person. I'm very hopeful. I'm very hopeful, optimistic, and I foresee a Gambia. I foresee a Gambia where perhaps social media will be used to strengthen our democracy. Where social media, because the Barrow administration, yesterday in my conversation with Jimmy mentioned that the Barrow administration hailed the importance of social media, the role social media played in removing dictatorship in the country. It's not just social media, it's not just Facebook, it's also WhatsApp groups. There are constantly and frequently people talking about issues, talking about politics. And this is a platform that is here to stay. It is the platform of our day, of this century. Perhaps a different platform might exist, but I foresee a Gambia where we effectively and efficiently and maturely, peacefully, respectfully use social media to strengthen not just our democracy, but our culture, our African heritage, our social capital. That we are one people, that we are united, that you might be sitting in the remotest villages in the Gambia, and you are able to talk to people around the world. Present a good image of yourself and the Gambia at large. I foresee a Gambia where young people will embrace democracy and democratic principles and uphold to the teachings and the principles of the rule of law. In such a system, the rule of law will be the order of the regime. We have in democracy, we still have a lot to improve the condition of the way and the manner in which the institutions in the country operate. Because it's a system. It is you don't just change, you can change people in a system, but institutions, there are policies, there are regulations. It takes time before we change all those regulations. So, but when we have the rule of law really functioning in the Gambia, it will what? It will protect citizens' rights, ensure peace and stability, reduce the power of the executive, and give power back to the people. One thing the Jammeh administration did was to, make the executive very powerful. It is hard if the executive is very, very powerful to hold them accountable. I also foresee a Gambia where people's representatives will respect their views and dance to their tunes. And this is particularly important for me. As young people, I will challenge all of us to be involved and to hold our elected leaders, the elected leaders, especially our representatives at the National Assembly, accountable. I expect a Gambia where I foresee a Gambia where National Assembly members will hold open Congress with members of their district, members of their constituent. It takes very, very, very little resource for National Assembly members to mobilize. This thing may not necessarily even be a physical program to start with. National Assembly members could have Facebook. They could utilize Facebook as a platform. They could utilize WhatsApp as a platform. They could utilize radio programs, radio shows as a platform to have a conversation with people from their district. If need be, to go to those districts and have, hold meetings, perhaps invite people from the villages, nearby villages to come together. Answer their questions. People have concerns, people have doubts. Just help them to understand perhaps how the system, how even the assembly works. It is not well understood by all of us. Some of us even think that our National Assembly members should be the one to go and build hospitals for us. No, explain the functions, your functions. At least, the least you could explain is the role and the function of the National Assembly members. When we are doing politics, partisan politics during the campaign, we sometimes make promises that, I'll make sure that your roads are built. I'll make sure that, you have a hospital. Some of our people think that you will go and build the hospitals. No, go back and make these people to understand that it is the executive. It is the executives that should implement programs and projects in your district. You have to ensure that state resources are well distributed in the country, especially in your district. That is where your concern is. So when you listen to the people, at least you can represent the people better. But gone should be those days when our National Assembly members only go to the districts because there is a naming ceremony or somebody passed away or they need to use their vehicle to take a dead body. Please let us hold our National Assembly members accountable. And if you're a National Assembly member listening to me, I encourage you, try to create a platform where you can have a conversation with your people. Have your telephone number easily accessible. People have concerns, people have questions, they can easily ask the questions, and you are at that position where even if you don't know the answer to all these questions, but at least you can direct them, guide them where they can find answers to their questions. So I expect that from you, and I foresee a Gambia where this will be the order of the day, where people's representatives frequently have dialogue with the people. I foresee a Gambia where citizens are committed also to be informed stakeholders about public policy issues, public affairs issues. When we are curious, we try to do research, we try to knock on doors, then basically we become informed stakeholders as young people. There is no excuse for us to sit down and say, oh, I don't know. I mean, perhaps you don't know, but there are means and ways through which you can, try to find the information. But I'll come to recommendations how we can strengthen some of those things. I also think that we should respectfully scrutinize the policies that, our representatives are coming up with. Some of these policies just become policies and regulations without even having dialogue with people. And what we end up seeing is law enforcement just coming, well, that's a law. There's no excuse. So, then you find yourself in that limbo, in that situation where you don't even know how the policy came into being, But just for an law enforcement officer to come and say, you violate a particular law or something like that. So let us hold our political elites responsible and accountable for their actions. As young people, we can do these things. I also foresee a Gambia where the present-day government really promote, protect, and uphold the constitutional rights and freedom of all people, including freedom of movement, freedom of assembly, freedom of association, freedom of what? Freedom to hold peaceful protests in the country. Because these are freedoms that are enshrined in our constitution, some of these freedoms can be used by others, bystanders. They can be used by people to instigate violence. For instance, peaceful protests. You might hold a protest and somebody came in and just tried to create violence. So, but to avoid that, we just need to make people to be aware and to uphold to the constitutional rights of every Gambian, regardless of what the situation is. There should be manners, there should be ways through which, protesters should be protected, and people who are in protest or people who use protest as a tool to instigate violence should be controlled. But it should not avoid individuals and Gambians from basically holding protest. I also foresee a Gambia where the politics of youth should be the politics of building a resilient system for mitigating climate change risk. We cannot build a democracy and ensure sustainable development in a vulnerable system. Our system is vulnerable, not just economically vulnerable, but is also vulnerable to climate hazards. We know we have seen situations where public infrastructures, public institutions are not just exposed, but they are just inaccessible to the public. When we have extreme weather events, when we have flooding in the country, especially during the rainy season, we see how people go through those situations, how school kids suffer to access schools, how women suffer on the highway to get to the market, how even civil society or civil servants, have it difficult to get a vehicle to go to work. So I foresee a Gambia where we, as young people, together with all the development stakeholders, particularly the government, the municipalities, and the councils, essentially try to create the channel, try to build a better system, a resilient system in the country. I also foresee a Gambia where civil society, where civic and political participation is done in a most peaceful, respectful manner, and where individuals are tolerant of one another's view or one another's worldview, one another's perspectives. A Gambia where nobody is intimidated by an interest group or by a political party, and where nobody is forced to be a member or to join a particular interest group or a political party. I foresee a Gambia where there will be a stronger civil society with the following core values: a caring and loving civil society, a responsible and responsive civil society, a very reliable and effective civil society, a productive and a civil society that is empowering, a civil society that serves as schools for democracy. In the civil society, in the literatures, if you study the literatures for the voluntary sector, you will understand one of the key roles of the civil society is to serve as schools. You know what schools are? We all know what schools are. Schools where kids go, and we all know what schools are. These are institutions, organizations that also serve as schools for promoting democracy in the country. That's why they are referred to as schools for democracy, civil society serving as schools for democracy. And how young people, we can fit into that school, I will explain that soon. So what I foresee is a lot. What I foresee in the Gambia is a lot. But what do I expect from myself? What do I expect from all Gambian youth to do in order to see an ideal Gambia that I am describing here? I expect you, the listener, to be part of or to strengthen the civil society group that you are part of, to promote and uphold to democratic values and principles. How do you do that? You can do that by providing citizens' fundamental right to development. Gone are those days. It was very unfortunate that during the days of Yahya Jammeh, that citizens were told that if they don't support the Jammeh administration, they will not benefit from or they will not receive any development project. Development is not a gift. Development is the fundamental right of all Gambians and of all people. I also expect you to ensure equal rights and equal opportunity for all people. It should not be whom you know. It should be based on merit. That scholarship you hold, that scholarship that you are given, it should be based on merit, not whom you know. Sometimes it should be based on positive discrimination. It is a good policy sometimes. I also expect you to fight against social injustice and inequality, protecting the rights of all, the rights and freedom of all citizens, irrespective of their socioeconomic status. That is an expectation that I have for myself, and I have the same expectation for you. I expect you to help farmers and communities to become much more resilient against the impacts of climate change and extreme weather events. If you are interested, an incredible team in the Gambia working with me, we have a non-profit in the country we call Help Gambia. It is Household Disaster Resilient Project. It's already a registered NGO, and we are into reducing risk and promoting resilience, building the resilience of the community. We have various programs and initiatives that we are welcoming every young person to join us. So if you're interested, send me a message and then we will connect. We are building a national Help Gambia volunteers. So we will have a registry or a register of Help Gambia volunteers in the country. So, but perhaps we'll do a different video talking about what Help Gambia does and what we are trying to do. But in essence, is one of those areas that we are passionate about. We want to build the resilience of farmers and households to extreme weather events, to reduce the risk and their vulnerability. I also expect you to fight and protect the rights of the children, girls, the elderly, the physically and mentally challenged individuals. On day-to-day basis, on the day-to-day transactions that we do, in whatever we do, let's try to remember that these individuals should be given preferential treatment, whether it is, boarding a bus or something like getting into the jelly jelly. Let us give priority to our elders. That is our culture. That's what we know. I expect you to promote the dignity and ensure that every individual, have the right to self-determination. We all want to reach certain level of life. I also expect you as a listener, as a young person, to build public awareness around important social issues, economic issues, environmental issues. For instance, right to education, right to quality health care, right to environmental protection, right to live in a decent environment. If we do all these things, I also foresee a Gambia where the civil society will educate all citizens about their democratic rights and responsibilities, improve people's political skills. Politics is a skill. Political involvement and engagement requires people to be a little bit skillful. It requires people to know how the state and how the government functions. A Gambia where the civil society will represent the common interests of the people and call people into political life. I expect you as a young person to respect and abide by the laws of the Gambia. And when we talk about the rule of law, we expect individuals to be respectful and abide by the laws. But we also expect individuals to be part of the formulation of those laws and policies that are put in place. I expect you to not reject and denounce any individual because you share a different political ideology, or you are in a different you don't share the same political party with this individual. I don't expect you to reject and denounce such people because they are from a different district or because they are from a different political party or because they subscribe to a different religious belief. I expect that you reject and denounce all forms of violence in the country, from domestic violence to political, from religious to social. Any sort of violence in our community, we should reject violence. Violence as people, we should reject. There is no excuse to be violent. And there is no excuse to offend other people. I expect you to have your opinions. Of course, express your opinions respectfully. Question, like I said, question the decision of the executives, question the decisions of our representatives. But I don't expect you to be disrespectful and rebel against the government. That is the least that I expect from myself and from all of you. The famous statement is that rights go with responsibility. We claim that we have rights and that our rights should be protected. But we should also be aware of our responsibilities. So I expect you to exercise your rights and be aware of your responsibilities. At least first to yourself. Your responsibility to your family, to your community, to the nation at large. I also expect you to listen to other people's worldview. Even if you are from the same household, our worldviews are different. Talk less of a whole country. You don't expect everybody to understand issues the way you understand them. So be tolerant. Allow people to express themselves. Just be aware that that is their level of understanding. Disagree with them. Try to, even if you're to convince them, do that in a more respectful manner. Don't fight physically. There is no need for that. So you have to consider other people's interests, other people's feelings, other people's perspectives. In a democracy, you have to compromise. It requires compromise. You should not expect, it is not even possible for you to think that you will win all the time. Today you win, tomorrow somebody else wins. But regardless of who wins, I expect you to interact with everybody. Interact with even those from a different political party. You're from UDP, I'm from NCP or whatever. Let us interact. We are one Gambia, one people. We cannot allow politics to divide us. When we talk about politics, for me, I appreciate development politics. Policy issues. Let's discuss issues. Let's discuss issues that will promote democracy, that will promote the well-being and the welfare of every Gambian. That is what we should be doing. So my expectations are great again. What are the opportunities? I ask myself, I expect a lot from myself and I expect a lot from the voluntary, from young people. But what are the opportunities that young people have in the country right now? The opportunities are there. And we as young people, We should be innovative. We should be creative. We should be passionate to create those opportunities. And there comes what they call the third sector of the economy. Usually the first sector of the economy is what? The government. The second is the private sector. The third sector of the economy is the voluntary sector. It is a contested term. Some people think that it includes NGOs. Some people think that it also includes civil society organizations. Some think that it includes non-state actors. In the United States, they refer to voluntary organizations as what? Non-profits. In the United Kingdom, they refer to them as charitable organizations. Sometimes people think that foundations are also included in this sector. And this sector can also function as they can create enterprises and create social entrepreneurship in the country. I will talk a little bit about that by the end of this video. But let me give a brief history or background of the voluntary sector in the Gambia. Of course, no Gambian should be taught about volunteerism. Volunteerism is as old as what? The existence of mankind in the Gambia or in Africa. Africans are we have that sense and that spirit of volunteerism. In the Gambia, formally, these voluntary organizations are classified as non-state actors. But in our communities, we know that these voluntary organizations, from community organizations, from CAFOs, we call them women CAFOs, they function as what? Change agents at community level. They mobilize and develop community resources for a shared common good, or shared common goal for the benefit of the entire community. We call them CAFOs sometimes. Every ethnic group, I believe, have a name for them. We have youth organizations. A lot of them are in the country. Formally again, in 2000, there was an agreement signed by the Gambia government and the ACP European Partnership called the Cotonou Agreement. Article 6 of the Cotonou Agreement, defines what non-state actors mean and what their function, their role is in terms of promoting development and cooperation in the Gambia. The agreement recognizes, I quote, the complementary role of other development players and defines participation of non-state actors as fundamental principle of cooperation, unquote. In the Gambia, the non-state actors include what? Private sector in the sense of associations, business associations, not like private companies. When private sector groups come together, they form an association, they are considered to be non-state actors. But mostly they include economic and social partners, including trade union organizations. They also include civil society in all its forms in the Gambia. A study was done in 2006, and I had access to this study from Tango, thanks to Madi Jobate. This study identified, since 2006, it identified 3,644 non-state actors operating in the Gambia, more than 10 years ago. And 75% of these non-state actors are considered to be economic and social partners, complementing government effort to promote democracy, to promote development in the country. Some of them at the time, only 8 of them were considered to be business or professional associations. Others are considered civil society in other forms like humanitarian or religious groups. But a lot of them are in the category of promoting social, economic, and environmental sustainability. So think about this, 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, today, I'm sure we have close to almost 10,000, I will say. I think this number will double. More than 10 years ago, I have known a lot of young organizations that came into being after this study. So in other words, we have this sector in the economy where you don't need an appointment letter to join, where you don't even need, a university education to create one. You don't need to be from a specific region of the country to create one. You can create one or you can join one. And you can partner with those that are there. So there is an opportunity, a big window of opportunity for young people, and particularly to the new graduates from the University of The Gambia. They say, to whom much is given, much is expected. Employment opportunity in the country may be limited. All of you may not be employed immediately. But if you can function, if you can strengthen the work of these non-profit, these non-state actors, if you think that is still a window, if you can create one and work with people, because some of the work that these people do, these are work that are done by other individuals and we pay them to do those kind of jobs. So if you can volunteer to do this for the community, for the people, then we save some resources, we save some money as country from that. And yet you get that gratification from helping somebody else. So a lot of them are civil society organizations, like I said. We have some of them that are also functioning as what? Are microfinance institutions that are providing loan, giving providing microfinance to our women, our farmers in the villages. Some of them are in the environment area, promoting reforestation, trying to protect the environment and creating awareness around the importance of climate change adaptation. Our farmers can be more climate resilient. There are various sectors, again, in this category called the third sector of the economy. So just like the formal sector of the economy, we have advocacy groups in the non-state actors sector. We have those that are operating in the education area. If you're interested in education, quality education, promoting quality education or quality healthcare, there are organizations that are basically doing this. Work with them. You don't need an appointment letter, I repeat, to be part of a non-state actor or a voluntary organization in the Gambia. If you are interested in religion, promoting religious values, religious principles, religious teaching in the country, there are a lot of other organizations doing that. Join them. If you are interested in women empowerment, youth empowerment, there are a lot of organizations, there are a lot of youth bodies out there. Join them. Agricultural development, promoting climate smart agriculture. Join them. Or even teaching or sensitizing farmers how to, how to build a climate smart agricultural practice. Join them. There are peace groups. There are groups that are promoting peace and peaceful coexistence. There are groups that are in the environment domain, natural resource, how we can protect our water bodies. Join these organizations. You don't need an appointment letter, I repeat, to join these organizations that are already in place. If that is known, create one. If you want to create one, the procedure is fairly simple. And it costs a very little amount of money to create a non-profit organization and have an organized group of people, have an agenda, have a goal, try to execute some of the little activities that you do. You need, I think, in the country, there used to be what was called Office for NGO Affairs. I think it used to be on the Ministry of Interior. May still be existing. But you need a TIN number from the Gambia Revenue Authority. You also need you need to register with the Attorney General's Chamber. Some of these non-profit organizations register with Tango. Tango is an institution responsible for coordinating and managing NGO affairs in the country. Register with Tango. There are opportunities that are out there that Tango could also support these local nonprofits or local associations. The good thing about this sector is that you don't need to pay a tax. The reason why that is good, because you are already contributing something to the economy. You are already building, livelihood, supporting people, creating awareness. Unfortunately, they are not also given any subvention, according to my conversation with Madi Jabate. Madi also told me that these institutions, organizations are usually accountable to their donors, since government is not giving them anything. But in my recommendation, I will argue points in which I think that these individuals or these organizations should be provided some kind of support from the government. So, like I said, these are institutions or organizations from local to regional and national level that can really promote democracy in the country. I said that in the literature, they call them schools for democracy. You see, when we recall what happened last 2016 before the presidential election, we have seen a movement. I saw a movement, not just a political movement, but it was a citizens' movement. A movement which includes non-state actors serving their role as schools for democracy, using social media, using WhatsApp, Facebook, communicating with all people in the remote villages of the Gambia, to create awareness on the need to have regime change, on the need to remove a dictator. It was not an easy journey, but it was a citizens' movement which makes the democracy in the first place possible. And it is still the same movement that I am expecting to promote and strengthen, consolidate the democracy that we have. It is a very young democracy, and the emphasis for me should be building awareness and building, the skills of these young individuals that are doing amazing work in the country. You might be thinking, well, Famara is not, these organizations don't have money, funding is a problem, you can have a great idea, but you don't have the resources. Those are all good points. But young people, the least we can do is to be creative. Wealth in the country, resources flow in the country in different ways. Let us target them. Let us be creative and innovative. People are trying to have fun. There is another sector, the entertainment sector. Let's create these institutions, local institutions, work with the entertainment sector, do some fundraising. There is a segment of people that are very happy from putting their money, attending those social events, fundraising events. Let us use that money and rechannel that money to develop those individuals, or to promote the well-being and the dignity of every Gambian. So there are various ways in which you can raise funds for these organizations, because I would not do justice to this conversation if I don't talk about how these organizations can mobilize resources. Some of them try to what? They pay fees, membership fees, monthly fees, or dues. Some of them, they do, they cultivate farms, community farms, and then sell the produce and then get some money from that to implement a couple of activities. Some of them get donations from individuals and organizations. But even some of them get support from international NGOs that are channeled through the main international NGOs that we have in the country, like Action Aid and others. There are funding opportunities out there if we organize ourselves. But individuals or organizations, whether it is internal or external, would not trust us if no one will come to you as an individual and give you money and say, go and sensitize farmers. But if you organize yourself as young people, people can come and give you the resources, the money, what you need to go out there and do the work. Sometimes some of those jobs we do, we pay consultants, we pay people to do it, and it's very expensive. But if a voluntary group, dynamic and a very highly expertise individuals can do this, then I'm sure the funding will be available. I am going to highlight few constraints and challenges that you and I need to be aware of, getting into this sector. Some of us already know, like I said, we talk about financial inadequacy. We talk about the environment, even the work environment is not available or it's not conducive where you may be able to hold your meetings. We talk about what vehicles. We don't have enough vehicles, mobility is a problem to access these communities sometimes. Sometimes even project management. If you give these individuals money, how they manage the project, even at community level. Projects come for the community. Community expert in project management is limited. Those are also challenges. Project sustainability is questionable. Projects are given to these voluntary organizations, and for ensure sustainability is always a challenge because of the way we manage the project. And data is also a problem, like, to access data in the country. Monitoring evaluation is another challenge. It's true that these organizations, even how can we hold them accountable? We give them money, and because they lack the capacity to do a thorough monitoring evaluation and even to report the outcomes or the impact of the project is challenging. But these are challenges, these are areas that we can turn into opportunities. These are challenges that we can basically try to solve. And those are the recommendations that I want to talk about. Finally, the government of the Gambia, I think, should see the voluntary sector as one of the most important sectors in consolidating not just the democracy, but in contributing to the socio-economic and environmental sustainability of the country. So there should be a new partnership with the voluntary sector. They should be motivated. They should be encouraged. We know that we are trying to tell the government to create employment opportunities. But in the meantime, before we have the employment opportunities be provided to these young people, here's a sector where if they are given the motivation, if they're given little incentives, they should be able to work. And it is more cost effective to have these young people involved in the voluntary sector for their own individual reasons, for their own passion, for their own self-gratification from the fact that you are helping yourself, helping your fathers, your community, women and children and other people. So I think that part of my recommendations, if possible, the voluntary sector, as I demystify it, already that we have some of them working in the education sector. We have some of them in agriculture, some of them in health promotion. Why not every ministry or every sector try to have some sort of allocation in their budget for youth organizations that are trying to collaborate with those institutions to promote their agenda? It costs very little. It costs very little. For example, the National Disaster Management Agency could have a budget line where they channel that money to a youth organization or a non-profit organization, an NGO, that is essentially going to sensitize the community about reducing the risk that we all face in the Gambia. Sensitize the community about building their own resilience, reducing their vulnerability to the climate hazards that we face on a daily basis. It is more cost effective for that group to do that. That's what we call outsourcing. So you outsource the service to a group that can perform the activities more cost effective and a more effective manner, more efficient manner than you, the main institute. You don't have to do all of it. So why can't all the sectors have such a budget line to essentially support these youth organizations? That will entice us, that will motivate us. No matter how little it is, we will also use that and also create other opportunities through which we can raise more resources for implementing our programs. But more importantly, I also recommend that there should be a greater collaboration among the non-state actors that we have in the country. Sometimes we are duplicating efforts, but sometimes also our intervention areas might be different. Might be They might all be interested in, let's say, reforestation, but some of them are focused just in LRR and others are in CRR. But can we collaborate? Can we try to collaborate and where necessary, implement activities together? It makes us stronger and better. I also think that we need, as Gambians, especially young people, we need to continue creating civic education and political participation. We need to continue building, people's awareness around politics, around development, around their civic rights, their political rights, their economic rights, their freedom. These are activities that can be done by an amazing group of young people, and it costs them very little to do so. Why can the Gambia government try to support such activities? And by ways, train you, all it requires sometimes is to train those youth and have them understand the issues that they will talk about. They have the level, the background information to do so. You only need to train. Some of them, you don't even need to train them. You just need to give them some dollars for them to go to the villages and to the regions and sensitize the community, to be on the radio, shows, and to be on the televisions. Capacity building. Capacity building is one of the most important for any development. When young people are capacitized, when they are, it is a necessity of development. Remember the words of a famous Amadou Camara said that every individual is born with what? Certain potential capabilities. And he said the purpose of development is to create the enabling environment for these individuals to maximize their capabilities. So since we know that everyone is gifted in one way or the other, can we build their capacity so that they can be, active stakeholders in national development? Finally, resource mobilization. Like I said before, let us all try to, mobilize funds and resources. The final thing I will say is on social entrepreneurship. A professor here at the Humphrey School said that social entrepreneurship is, and these can be an enterprise where young people can be involved. It can be an enterprise, started by a non-profit organization or an NGO or a youth organization or for-profit organization. But social enterprises, Professor Stone said, really have social impacts. What social impact can you have on the community? That is the goal for every social enterprise. And what do? They come up with innovative approaches. They identify what unjust equilibriums in the economy or in society and identify opportunities to correct those, inequalities or those unjust equilibriums that are in the country. They also create solutions to impact what? A target group of people. Usually they will target, you come up with a social, and I have known, I think Fatmata Saho came up with a very amazing social enterprise in the country that is helping women. If you go to Westfield Junction, you have enterprise, you have stalls there, see help women to start. Women are starting business, they are making some money, So those are activities that we young people don't have to wait. And if you listen to her story, you'll be amazed how she started. She doesn't get a $1 million project or $1,000 project to start that activity or to start that enterprise. But today it is functioning, it is working. We have young entrepreneurs in the country. So it is not just the reason I'm bringing this here, because this is also sort of like the business. It is a combination of both having a social ambition or a social goal, but it also has a business motive, because you also maximize profit there, get something out of it. So if it is not very much the core voluntary engagement that you will be in, you can do something of this nature, social enterprises. that is social entrepreneurship. So we need to also encourage young people to get into entrepreneurship, to start, poultry, projects, or, any kind of project that will generate funding, that will generate revenue for you and help the community is just commendable. So these are the things that I think I wanted to share. And this video is already long, but I will stop here, and then I will thank all of you, the listeners, for the time that you took to listen to me. Don't listen to me so much, because I will talk the whole day. I'm sorry that the video is longer. I could have made it could have been shorter than this. But I thank you for the time you have taken. I'll make another video where I will talk about some of the things I recall as a young person struggling in the Gambia. I mean, struggling from the villages, coming all the way to the Combos, and the struggle continues here in America. And I will also share some principles, or if you like, elements or rules of success based on my own experience. And I recommend that you watch that video. And I thank you very much for your time. And finally, I want to take the opportunity again and give a thumbs up to Jimmy Hendry Nzally and the team. So I hope that this is not too long of a video. I think already it is, but I mean, I'm just chatting with you. If you are not very busy, you have time to talk to me. That is just sharing my opinions. All right. Thank you. Love you all. Bye-bye.